everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Virtual Realities. I'm Sophia.
And I'm Mason. We're thrilled to have you with us as we dive into the fascinating world of virtual relationships. Today's topic is virtual relationships, the weird and wonderful realities.
That's right, virtual relationships are such a broad and intriguing subject. From online friendships to digital romances, they've become a significant part of our lives. So, Mason, how do you feel about the rise of virtual relationships?
Honestly, it's a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, they've made it easier for people to connect across distances. On the other, it sometimes feels like we're losing touch with real-life interactions. What about you, Sophia? What's your take?
I agree with you. The ability to connect with people from all over the world is incredible. But there are definitely challenges. For instance, how do you build a genuine connection through a screen? It's not always easy. Let's dive into some of the main aspects of virtual relationships.
Sure. So, when we talk about virtual relationships, we're referring to any form of connection that primarily occurs online. This can include everything from social media interactions to online dating and even virtual reality relationships.
Exactly. One of the key aspects of virtual relationships is the communication medium. Unlike face-to-face interactions, virtual relationships rely on text, video calls, and sometimes even virtual avatars. This changes how we express ourselves and how we interpret others' expressions.
Yes, and that brings us to a crucial point, the interpretation of emotions. When you're texting someone, it's easy to misinterpret their tone or intent. Without facial expressions or vocal cues, things can get lost in translation.
Definitely, emojis and GIFs have become a way to add some emotional context, but they don't always capture the full picture. For instance, a simple LOL can mean anything from genuine amusement to polite acknowledgement.
Right, and there's also the concept of catfishing, where people present themselves in a misleading way. This can create a lot of trust issues in virtual relationships. Have you ever had an experience with this, Sophia?
Fortunately, I haven't experienced catfishing personally, but I know it's a common issue. It's important to be cautious and verify information when forming connections online.
Absolutely. Another interesting aspect of virtual relationships is how they affect our real-life relationships. Sometimes, people find that their online friendships or romances impact their interactions with friends and family.
That's a great point. Virtual relationships can sometimes lead to feelings of isolation or neglect in real life. Balancing both worlds is crucial. What are some strategies you think can help with this?
Well, setting boundaries is key. For example, allocating specific times for online interactions and making sure to spend quality time with people in real life can help. It's all about finding that balance.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about the positive sides of virtual relationships. For many, online connections have been a source of support and community. For example, people with niche interests or those in marginalized communities often find a sense of belonging online.
That's very true. Virtual communities can provide a space where people feel understood and accepted. This is especially important for those who might not have those connections in their immediate physical surroundings.
And let's not forget the innovation of virtual reality relationships. VR is taking online interactions to a whole new level by allowing people to interact in simulated environments, making the experience more immersive.
It's incredible, isn't it? Imagine having a virtual dinner date or attending a concert with someone who's miles away. VR can bridge the gap between physical and virtual experiences.
Absolutely, but it also raises questions about how these experiences compare to real-life interactions. Is the virtual experience fulfilling or just a substitute for something more tangible?
That's an interesting question. It might depend on the individual and the quality of the virtual interaction. Some might find it very fulfilling, while others might crave more direct, physical interaction.
Indeed, and as technology continues to advance, we'll likely see even more innovative ways to connect virtually. It's an exciting time for virtual relationships, with endless possibilities on the horizon.
Now, we're going to dive into personal experiences and real-life stories about virtual relationships. We'll also discuss how these relationships have impacted people's lives.
That's right. To kick things off, let's talk about some personal stories. Mason, have you ever had a virtual relationship that had a significant impact on you?
Actually, yes. A few years ago, I met someone through an online gaming community. We started chatting regularly and eventually became good friends. Even though we never met in person, our conversations and shared experiences were quite meaningful.
That's a great example. It's fascinating how virtual connections can sometimes feel as significant as face-to-face relationships. What about the challenges you faced in that virtual friendship?
Well, one challenge was not being able to read body language or facial expressions. Sometimes, messages could be misunderstood. For example, if I joked about something, it might come off as rude if the other person didn't catch the tone.
That's a common issue in virtual relationships. Communication can be tricky when you only have text to rely on. It's important to use clear and kind language to avoid misunderstandings. How did you manage those challenges?
I found that being extra clear and thoughtful in my messages helped. If I was joking, use emojis or explain that it was a joke. It also helped to check in regularly and talk about how we were feeling.
Those are excellent strategies. Another thing people often encounter is the difference in time zones. Have you ever had to deal with that?
Oh yes, definitely. My friend and I were in different time zones, so scheduling calls was sometimes a challenge. We used to set up specific times for video chats, and we made an effort to be flexible with each other's schedules.
Time zones can definitely add another layer of complexity. But it sounds like you managed it well. Now, let's share another story. I recently spoke with a listener who had a long-distance relationship with someone they met online. They had been together for over a year before meeting in person. The virtual aspect of their relationship was crucial in maintaining their connection.
That's a touching story. It shows how virtual relationships can support long-distance connections and help people stay close even when they're far apart. Did they face any difficulties?
Yes, they did. One major challenge was dealing with moments when one of them needed emotional support but couldn't be physically present. They had to rely on constant communication and creative ways to support each other.
That's definitely challenging. In such cases, being attentive and offering support in whatever way possible is crucial. It's all about maintaining that emotional connection despite the distance.
Exactly. Another aspect of virtual relationships is the concept of online personas. People often present themselves differently online than they do in real life. Have you ever encountered this?
Yes, I have. Some people create an idealized version of themselves online, which can sometimes lead to mismatches when meeting in person. It's important to be genuine and transparent to build a trustworthy relationship.
Absolutely. Authenticity is key in any relationship, virtual or not. And it's important to remember that everyone has their own version of their online persona, but it should align with who they are in real life.
Very true. Now, let's discuss how virtual relationships can impact real-life relationships. Have you noticed any effects on your personal relationships due to your virtual connections?
I've observed that sometimes people might feel neglected if their friends or family members are spending too much time online. It's essential to balance virtual interactions with in-person connections to avoid feelings of neglect.
That's a valid point. Maintaining balance is crucial to ensure that virtual relationships complement rather than replace real-life interactions.
Another interesting point is how virtual relationships can sometimes lead to positive changes in real-life relationships. For example, a person might learn new communication skills online that benefit their offline interactions.
Definitely. Virtual relationships can teach us a lot about effective communication and empathy, which can improve our overall social skills. Now, we'll discuss strategies for making virtual relationships successful and address some common issues people face. We'll also share some practical tips and insights.
Sounds like a plan. Let's start with strategies for building and maintaining a strong virtual relationship. One key strategy is effective communication. Mason, what do you think is essential for good communication in virtual relationships?
Good question. I think clarity is crucial. Since we can't rely on body language, it's important to be clear and specific in our messages. Avoiding ambiguity helps prevent misunderstandings. For example, if you're feeling down, it's better to say, "I'm feeling a bit sad today," rather than just saying, "I'm not feeling great."
Absolutely. Clear communication helps ensure that both parties understand each other's feelings and intentions. Another important aspect is regularity. Keeping in touch regularly helps maintain the connection. How do you manage to stay connected?
I use a combination of scheduled calls and spontaneous messages. Scheduled calls ensure we have dedicated time to talk, while spontaneous messages help keep the conversation lively and engaging. For instance, sending a quick, "Hey, just thinking of you," can go a long way.
That's a great approach. Regular check-ins and spontaneous interactions both play a role in keeping the relationship vibrant. Another strategy is setting boundaries. It's essential to discuss and agree on boundaries, like how often you'll communicate and what topics are off limits. Have you found setting boundaries helpful?
Yes, definitely. Setting boundaries helps manage expectations and prevents misunderstandings. For example, agreeing on how much time to spend online can help avoid feelings of neglect. It's all about finding a balance that works for both parties.
Exactly. Boundaries help maintain a healthy balance between virtual and real-life interactions. Now, let's talk about handling common issues in virtual relationships. One issue people often face is feeling disconnected. How can someone address this?
Feeling disconnected can be challenging. To address this, try finding new ways to engage with each other. For example, you could play online games together, watch a movie at the same time, or start a joint project. It helps create shared experiences even when you're apart.
That's a great suggestion. Engaging in shared activities can strengthen the bond and reduce feelings of disconnection. Another common issue is dealing with conflicts. Conflicts are natural in any relationship, but handling them virtually can be tricky. What's your advice for resolving conflicts online?
It's important to approach conflicts calmly and constructively. Start by acknowledging the issue and expressing your feelings honestly. For instance, you might say, "I felt hurt when you didn't reply to my message yesterday." Avoid blaming or accusing, and focus on finding a solution together.
Excellent advice. Addressing conflicts with empathy and understanding helps resolve issues and maintain a healthy relationship. Another challenge is maintaining trust. Trust is crucial in any relationship, but it can be harder to build and maintain virtually. How do you keep trust strong in a virtual relationship?
Trust is indeed vital. To build and maintain trust, be honest and transparent. Share your thoughts and feelings openly, and avoid misleading or hiding information. For example, if you're feeling unsure about something, communicate it rather than keeping it to yourself.
Transparency and honesty are key to building trust. Being open about your feelings and concerns helps strengthen the relationship. Finally, let's talk about setting goals for the relationship. Setting goals can help you stay focused and motivated. What kind of goals might be useful?
Setting goals like planning future visits, working on a joint project, or even setting communication milestones can be helpful. For instance, setting a goal to have a video call every week can provide a sense of structure and purpose in the relationship.
That's a great idea. Goals give the relationship direction and help both parties stay engaged. As we wrap up this podcast, let's review some key points. Effective communication, regular interaction, setting boundaries, and addressing issues constructively are all important strategies for a successful virtual relationship.
And don't forget about building trust, finding ways to engage, and setting meaningful goals. These strategies can help create a strong and fulfilling virtual relationship.
Absolutely.
Now, We'll explore future trends in virtual relationships and offer some final reflections on the topic. We'll also recap what we've learned throughout the podcast.
Let's start by looking ahead. Virtual relationships are evolving rapidly with technology. Mason, what do you think are some emerging trends in this area?
Great question. One trend is the rise of virtual reality VR and augmented reality AR technologies. These technologies are starting to offer more immersive ways to connect with others. For example, VR can create a shared space where people feel like they're in the same room, even if they're miles apart.
That's fascinating. VR and AR can definitely change how we experience virtual relationships. Another trend is the growing use of artificial intelligence AI in communication tools. AI can help manage schedules, suggest conversation topics, or even simulate human-like interactions. How do you see this affecting virtual relationships?
AI can make managing virtual relationships easier by automating some of the routine tasks. For example, AI can remind you about important dates or help draft messages. However, it's important to remember that AI shouldn't replace genuine human interaction. It should complement it.
Absolutely. AI can be a useful tool, but it's the human touch that makes relationships special. Another trend is the increasing importance of digital well-being. As virtual relationships become more common, it's important to manage our online time and avoid burnout. What are your thoughts on this?
Digital well-being is crucial. It's easy to get overwhelmed by constant connectivity, so setting boundaries and taking breaks from screens is important. Finding a balance between online and offline activities helps maintain mental and emotional health.
Well said. Balancing online interactions with real-life experiences is key to staying healthy and connected. Now, let's reflect on the main points we've covered in this podcast. We've explored personal experiences, strategies for successful virtual relationships, and future trends.
That's right. We discussed the importance of clear communication, regular interaction, setting boundaries, and handling conflicts. We also looked at how emerging technologies like VR, AR, and AI might impact virtual relationships.
And we shared practical tips for managing virtual relationships, such as finding new ways to engage, setting meaningful goals, and maintaining trust.
Before we wrap up, let's talk about some final reflections. Virtual relationships can be incredibly rewarding, but they also come with their own set of challenges. It's important to approach them with openness, patience, and creativity.
Exactly. The key is to stay engaged and be proactive in addressing issues as they arise. Virtual relationships can be as fulfilling as in-person connections if we put in the effort.
One final thought: whether virtual or face-to-face, relationships are about connection and understanding. Embracing both the advantages and challenges of virtual interactions can lead to meaningful and lasting relationships.
Well put, Mason. As we conclude, we hope this podcast has provided valuable insights and practical advice on virtual relationships.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We've enjoyed sharing our thoughts and experiences with you. If you have any questions or want to share your own stories, feel free to reach out.
We appreciate your time and engagement. Remember, relationships of any kind require effort, understanding, and care. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.